The FNRad Snowboard Podcast is presented by Vans. Season 6 of FNRad is sponsored by Wired Snowboards, the Boardroom Snowboard Shop, Anon Optics, Crow's Nest Barbershops, and Ocean Rose Organics Microdoses, Tribute Board Shop in Nelson, BC, and Stance Socks. FNRad listener Shane Austin bought a custom Wired Recon after hearing that Wired builds snowboards right here in Vancouver, BC. I caught up with Shane at Mount Seymour this past weekend, and we chatted about his new board. I put a shout out on the show like, hey, look, if you buy a Wired board because you listen to the show, let's link up and tell me what you think about it. So that's what we're doing right now.
That's what we're doing. It's so funny. That is where the brand kind of came to me, was listening to the show.
Right. So how did you come up with the graphic? It's a sick graphic.
As soon as I was in there talking to him, it just started all kind of started to flow. And I said, I really like the topo maps, like the kind of asymmetry of them. And he immediately pulls up the computer and he's like, I've worked on something like that before. And then it just kind of spiraled to, oh yeah, that map that we found right there has my house and the backside of Peak on it.
Damn.
And I was like, it took maybe 20 minutes of back and forth, and it was pretty much done.
When I saw the board, I was like, that's a sick graphic. And then when you're like, dude, it's a topo map, my house is on here, grouse is on here, I was like, what? You just blew my fucking mind, dude. That's so great. So how did you choose the Recon shape?
So I had the board I'd been riding for the last 10 years or so, and I took it down to the shop and kind of was comparing it to the other shapes and talking with Rob and coming up with what I thought I wanted. And then he told me what he thought he was hearing. And I think the kind of compromise we came to was this board. And he set it up for me. We had a lot of discussion about the setup. And this is the first year where, if on a really deep day, I might have done something, but I've just kind of set it and ridden it. Right. And it's helped my riding so much, not constantly thinking about that. And that was maybe one of the best parts coming out of the board, was Rob giving me a bit of life advice. You don't need to be worrying about that every day. They've got enough shapes, I should say, that there is kind of something for everybody. And the price point, I mean, you can't get an American-made board for that money. If you're in the market for a board, like everybody I've talked to this season, this is what you want to be on.
Yeah, man.
I wasn't ever going to have my own pro model. But Rob spent as much time with me as I felt I had no more to give in terms of input, So, it feels great. And it works for me.
Awesome. Thanks for doing this. Shane Austin, everybody, on a Wired board. And today was a special day for you.
100th day of the season, not the year. But I think seeing how 2021's going, I think I'll be able to say both in a little bit. So, yeah.
Amazing, dude. Sick. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Support also comes from Grouse Mountain, Mount Seymour, and Tomahawk Cannabis Extracts. Hana Beaman is a snowboarder's snowboarder. Hana came up competing in slopestyle, winning the U.S. Open and medals at the X Games, and also she bought her very first snowmobile back in 2003. Hana cut her teeth riding with the Grenade crew and learned to sled with Travis Rice. And this year, she competed in the Natural Selection Tour, where she held her own against the world's best riders in the World's Raddest contest. We started our conversation talking about women in competitive snowboarding and some of the barriers they've faced historically.
If you've been told from your childhood that you're not strong enough or not good enough, it's like it takes time for others to slowly expand that boundary to show that that's not the case, Mm-hmm. So it's like the more girls even try and push it themselves, the more other girls see that that's not true. And so it's also, it's visibility, it's opportunity, it's support from around you, to prove the contrary of what we've been told our whole existence as women. Mm-hmm. That you can't do that. That's not possible for you. You'll never be as good as the guy. It's it takes time to break down those negative boundaries to be oh, I can do what they told me I could do. Mm-hmm. And it's it just, it's a ripple effect. So it takes time. It's not an overnight thing,
Yeah. And I'm embarrassed it took me this long to get to it. I don't know. I just didn't ever really think about it. What you're saying is really super important. It's important for my listeners to hear it. because they're intelligent, right? When we talked about it before, people were like, oh yeah, that totally makes sense. It's like, yeah, less support, less everything, right? If you don't have Red Bull rehab, you're going to think twice before you jump off something that might break you in half when you're hurt.
Yeah. And I think just a simple experiment to discuss is like, if you have a daughter and a son and you flip the switch and you tell your daughter that she is capable of everything, she's so strong, and you tell your son that he's like, you know, delicate and that he shouldn't do that. It's like, you're going to grow up with a son that is super timid and scared and doesn't think he can do stuff, but you'll have a daughter that thinks she can take on the world. And that's pretty much what has been done for centuries. And so it's finally like flipping the script and telling your daughters that they're capable and able to do that stuff. It's like, you're not creating this, you know, glass ceiling that they have to break through. So you're just opening up the whole roof, and they're limitless opportunities. It's just changing the narrative.
Yeah.
You know?
Encouraging them to watch the natural selection. Be like, check this shit out.
Yeah. Yeah. And especially with the natural selection, it's like, I think it just shows you how hard riding that kind of terrain is. It's like that you can take 3 of the most insane park riding competitive women snowboarders and put them in that environment and just see how challenging it is for them.
Yeah.
I think it speaks not to their inability, but it speaks to the challenging aspect of what that event is. It's like, girls are way better at snowboarding than me, and then it's like, I can shine because I just have more knowledge and experience in that arena. So I just think it speaks to like the challenging points of all the different kinds of snowboarding, you know? Yeah,
natural selection is like, it's a live event almost, right? Like, you're trying to film a video part in one run, and if you've ever tried to film even an Instagram edit, you know you don't get everything all in a row, ever. Not ever. I can't believe you guys are able to shred that hard in those conditions. I think the general public misses a little bit of how huge those things were too at the definitely at both events.
And I was thinking the other day, like, filming is like you're filming, if you're like an actress or actor, whatever, filming a movie. Like, you have a lot of shots at getting the take, you know, like, you can try it over and over, and you slowly build this amazing thing that people can watch and appreciate. But they don't see all the like takes it took to get that one line or whatever. And then like contest riding is like Broadway, where it's like you practice, but then once you're live on stage, it's like you can't mess up. Like, you have to perform in that moment, and people get that. And that's a thrilling aspect of Broadway, right? Like, it's live, it's just happening, it's very raw. And that's just different types of actors. Yeah. It's like you can take them and move them around, but it's like there's different skills, and there's some people that do well in Broadway setting. There's some people that do well on, like, you know, feature length movie settings. It's just different skills. And like, I consider myself more of a big film actress, because I used to do Broadway, and it used to be more in the moment, like, you got it now, but it's just different skill sets.
That's a really great analogy. Totally makes sense. 100%.
Yeah. We have different scenarios every time. Like, Broadway, you're on that same stage. You basically know the same kind of the spiel. It's a controlled environment. Whereas like, if we're out filming, it's like, it's different every time. You're in a different setting. You're working with different scenarios. It's like, it's a little more unpredictable. So, you got to respect both of them. And I think it's just a preference of what people enjoy doing, you know?
How early in the season did you know you were going to natural selection? Like, did you know last year?
I had an idea that I would be going, but like, they didn't give us the 100% that we're in until probably, I don't even know, October?
Right.
Or November.
Right.
So it's like, I've been working with Travis the last couple seasons to like go out there and like do some promo stuff to kind of go look at the course and kind of discuss why it's a needed thing in snowboarding. And then it's like I went out for the summer, we did the test event. I went out for the summer build. So it's like I was really invested in the event, but it wasn't a sure thing until they had a panel of people that picked out the people that would be doing the event. So I feel like I paid my time.
Yeah.
But I didn't know if I was actually in it until this fall.
And then when you get that call, are you nervous about it? Are you excited? It seems like the kind of contest you'd just be super psyched right until you have to take your run. And then you're like, oh shit, it's a contest.
Yeah. I mean, I was really excited because at least I could start being like, yeah, for sure. I get to do it.
Yeah.
Like it's a thing that I will be doing. And I think it didn't really, in the back of my head, I was like, I'm doing this contest. And then like I could prepare as much as I could, but I didn't really like totally grasp it until I was like there.
Yeah.
And, like it's always a little bit of like a disbelief. Like, is this happening? Is this still going to happen? Like, am I doing this?
Yeah.
Especially with the COVID year, it's like always like, I don't know, maybe it won't happen. It's supposed to happen, but it's just, I feel like that mind frame we've been in for a year now, that it's like, who knows, anything could change at any moment.
Yeah. Had you been traveling around a little bit? Because I know some people can travel because their jobs require it. And I think you fall in that category, but like leading up to you leaving, were you in Bellingham when you went to go to Wyoming?
No, I didn't travel a lot last summer. Like I stayed pretty close to home, like most people. And then once I finished up with my fire academy here in the fall, and like mid-December, I hit the road and I went down to Mammoth to go stay with a close friend and just ride the mini park down there for the first couple weeks of my season. Like my season started late, mid-December's pretty late to start.
Yeah.
Just wanted to kind of catch up and get my, air awareness and stuff going down at Mammoth. And I was down there until mid-January, and then I cruised up to Jackson mid-January and posted up there with Elena and Michelle Parker for a couple weeks in a condo, and just kind of got used to being in Jackson and riding the POW, and got a look at the course and just kind of started mentally digesting the event.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So did you drive up or do you fly?
I drove. Yeah. I did like a big road trip.
Yeah.
Like self-contained, had everything with me, and just drove from Bellingham down to Mammoth.
Wow.
Spent a couple days down in Big Bear over the holiday, and then drove back to Mammoth, and then cruised up through Salt Lake and up to Jackson Hole, and pretty much was on the road. I was in Jackson for close to 2 months after.
Oh, wow.
After the event. Like I spent most of my season in Jackson Hole. It's one of my favorite places to ride, and not just because of the terrain and the awesome snowboarding that it has, but just because it feels like another kind of family community out there. So I've been going out there for, 20 years now, and a lot of like good friends and smiling faces. It's always fun to go shred with and hang out with. And so it's nice. It feels like a second home in a sense.
Yeah, you're from Santa Barbara originally. One of the things I was shocked to hear is like your parents were friends with Tom, or like neighbors with Tom Sims. Like, how insane is that?
Yeah, it's such a weird coincidence. Like, I mean, and I don't consider myself from Santa Barbara. Like, my parents lived there for sure, but we moved to Big Bear when I was like 2.
Oh,
so it's not like I have really any recollections of being in Santa Barbara, but I have like little snippets of, kid memories. But
sure.
As far as I'm aware of, we really, like, I grew up in Big Bear, and I never, like, I knew of Santa Barbara, but it's not like we went back or anything. Like, Big Bear was our new home. And then, yeah, it's like randomly, like, Tom lived kind of in the area of Santa Barbara that my parents lived, and who knows whatever connections and how how that all worked out. I just was like, oh, cool. Like, I guess I'm starting to snowboard when I'm like 6 years old. And we got this teeny little kid's prototype board that he sent up, and it was just funny, my parents were pretty tuned in to like doing the fun stuff. Like my dad surfed and did stuff when he was younger, and you know, they always lived a pretty active and adventurous lifestyle. So
is Big Bear a mountain community? It's just like
it is definitely a mountain community. It's funny because it's just this little tucked away zone in Southern California, you know, and it's got ski areas and like good mountain biking and hiking, and you know, the lake brings a lot of people up for fishing and wakeboarding and stuff like that. There's just a lot of awesome like mountain activities to do up there, and I'm super stoked I got to be raised there.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was a good move. Like my parents went up to Fawnskin where we had a little family cabin, kind of, you know, like 400 square foot old cabin that my like great grandfather or somebody built like in the 40s. And like and so they kind of moved up, or didn't move, they went up and did like a, you know, ski vacation, and then they ended up just being like, well, you know what, we're just gonna stay. So we just stayed and moved there. And you know, my parents were like, well, cool, we got to find jobs. Like they both worked at the ski areas, you know, doing random jobs at the ski areas. My mom worked on lake patrol for a bunch of years, kind of, you know, just doing odds and ends, like kind of your typical ski bum move where you're like, well, we're just going to move here and find jobs and work where we can get passes and kind of figure it out. So
rad. So you get a board at 6, but it's you're not riding a board all the way through. You go kind of back and forth to skiing for a bit, I think, right?
Yeah, because I started skiing that season that we moved up to Big Bear. I think my parents got me on some skis when I was like 2 and a half, whatever I was. Wow. And yeah, because they're definitely the kind of parents that are like, we like to do all this stuff and you're going to do it with us because we're not doing it. So it was like, I just kind of got tagged along, had to learn how to do all that stuff. And yeah, I learned how to ski, and then, I have no recollection of learning how to ski. And then snowboarding, like getting, thrown on a little snowboard at the age of 6. Like I have very vague memories of learning how to like do a toe side turn and being like scared and stuff like that. But I kind of did both for many years and got a little more into snowboarding when I was in my like early teens, and totally oblivious to like the scene going on at Snow Summit and Bear Mountain, like just in my little kid world.
Rad.
I had a couple friends in high school that got more into ski racing, and I had done a little bit of that as like a little kid. Mom and dad kind of did the night ski racing scene at Summit, and so I got to do that too. And just kind of bounced back and forth. And after a couple of years of ski racing, I kind of started tuning into the snowboard scene at Snow Summit a little more.
Was there a moment where it just clicked for you, or where you see a movie or something and you're like, oh my God, I want to start doing that?
Yeah, I would say like I started riding with some other girlfriends and kind of found my tribe one season at Summit, and just started meeting a ton of new people. Like I remember being like out on whatever I had a barfoot snowboard that I think I might have still had a Sims. I forget. I had another like Sims snowboard in my teen. And then that got stolen actually when we were night riding at Summit one night. Me and my friend Sarah, our boards got stolen.
Both of them.
Bummed.
Oh man, that's a nasty experience, hey?
Yeah. And I'm like, I wish I still had that thing because it would have been such a classic to have.
Oh yeah.
But that might have actually been when I started getting into skiing because I didn't have a snowboard anymore. And then I got back into snowboarding. My mom and dad like got me this barfoot snowboard with like metal bindings from like a discount shop up in Big Bear. It was like a whole package for like $200 or something like that.
So rad.
And I was like, woohoo, I got a snowboard again. I think that's when I kind of got back into snowboarding and cruising around and finding like these new friends around Summit, and they were pretty key to like cluing me into like what was going on. Like I was clueless. Like, I remember having my barfoot snowboard and riding solo and having like a Sessions long sleeve t-shirt and like a Lib Tech like hoodie, and like people being like, whoa, what's up with you? Like just like clueless. And so like I had some friends like kind of show me the ropes of like what was going on, and checking out the snowboard park a little bit more and more. And then I had a buddy of ours, Pat Allen, who used to do black flies. He started up a little snowboard shop called Real Deal down at the base of Snow Summit, and we'd go in there and see what was going on. I'd look at like boots, and I think I got a pair of Vans boots, like, and he was like, hey, you should check out this video, and he gave me Decade to watch.
Nice.
Like before that, like the only snowboarding I was aware of, like snowboard video wise, was I think we got a Sims team snowboard video called Snow Days from like 1988.
Oh my
and that
God.
that was like what I knew of the snowboard world. And I still watch that, and I'm like, that explains a lot of like why I am the way I am in snowboarding. Like it's pretty ridiculous, like Sean Palmer and Terry Kidwell, and like
Yeah.
Fernandez, and like that whole team from like the Sims team back then. I'm sure Tom maybe sent that to us like with the mini shred board that he sent or something like that.
That's so dope. I imagine you watching that and being like, yeah, I'm pretty much as good as I'm as good as these guys.
This is awesome. Like that was like the first look at kind of the culture of snowboarding coming up, and like for me. And so it was like fast forward from that is what I knew of snowboarding to like watching Decade, being like, oh my God, like this is awesome. Yeah, like being like immersed into the snowboard scene at Snow Summit and being like, oh my God, like that's those guys, that's the Forum crew, that's all these people like riding in my backyard. It was just really cool,
Yeah,
like,
all of a sudden you look around and you're like, I'm in a video.
Like, I'm
fucking believable.
I'm watching the movie happen,
Oh, that's so sick.
Cool.
Yeah. Those little Vans boots, were they Cersei Wallace's, or were they just like a high standard or something like that?
I remember seeing the Cersei Wallace signature boots at another shop, Goldmine.
Yeah.
That were awesome and helped me out a little bit, but I think at Real Deal, it was the high standards. And I look back and I'm like, man, those things were beefy. Like, I was like just wearing these big old puffy boots, and I was like, it was just great. But they were like my first bought pair of boots. Like I would rent boots from Goldsmiths, like that other shop. Like they would be like, oh, well, like, because we weren't wealthy. We weren't like rich by any means. Like we were pretty poor when I was young, so it was like we couldn't afford to buy boots. It's like I would rent boots from Goldsmiths or whatever, and I remember being able to like buy a pair of high standards and being like, yeah, like I have my own boots. But they were so crazy. But I don't know, it was just a fun like explorative time for me, like living at Summit and starting to get maybe some stuff for free, like getting hooked up with some like, Smith goggles,
Rad.
Riding for, I don't know. It was just like, you're just a kid and you're just like, oh heck yeah, like I could get this for free, or getting some like Volcom stickers from some people, or getting, I don't know. Got like a new snowboard, and it just kind of, it was like my world just opened up.
Do you start competing as a kid? Like, do you and that crew of girls kind of go like, hey, we should go in a contest. There's a contest this weekend. Let's hit that. Yeah,
like we would do the USASA contests at Summit.
Rad.
And that kind of, I met another group of people through that. And we would do a lot of like the Snow Summit events, and we'd go to like Mountain High for one or two if they had some over there. But yeah, I was totally involved in the USASA series and did well. I qualified to go to the nationals the first year I did it.
Whoa.
And didn't get to go because I broke my collarbone in the park. But then the next year I got to go, and they were in Waterville Valley. And so, we kind of like stored away some money, raised a little bit of money to travel out there and be a part of the nationals. And I won the slopestyle at nationals.
Whoa.
And yeah, that was a really awesome moment for me.
Yeah, that's
and
big.
I was a rep rider for Solomon Bonfire at that time. And so I thought that was like something to be really proud of and be like, see, like I'm worth it. You should
Totally.
continue to sponsor me because I'm doing good stuff. Yeah. And I feel like that was kind of when I knew I wanted to do it more seriously.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you continue with Solomon Bonfire at that point, or after you win nationals? I'm sure there's a couple of offers on the table from a few different people.
You would think that, but no, it was kind of the opposite, like I think I was getting some stuff from Solomon, from the rep, the SoCal rep, Solomon Bonfire, and that was awesome. But then when I went to college in Tahoe, I was like, because I did, I was trying to compete and do all this stuff, but I wasn't really doing that great yet in the pro events that would come to town. Like I'd try to do a couple of big airs that I think it was a Grand Prix or something like that. And it wasn't quite there yet, which is totally like understandable.
Yeah.
Like I'm 17 and like just doing stuff and like, you're kind of in that rep rider zone. But when I went to college in Tahoe at Sierra Nevada College, so I could still snowboard, but start going to school and maybe learning more about ski business and stuff like that or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I tried to get like my rep sponsorship deal transferred up to the Northern California guy, and they were like, well, write us a essay on why we should sponsor.
My God.
I was like, kind of deflated. I'm all, well, I just won junior nationals and I'm like doing this other stuff. And I was just like, you know what? Fuck it. Like, I don't need to write an essay. Like if I need to explain to you my value, like I'm just like, nah, I'm good. So I just kept riding on like the Michelle Taggart board that I had. And
wow.
And, just would get gear from other people and kind of was doing the, college thing and riding as much as I could on the weekends at Alpine Meadows or Squaw or Boreal or wherever, and going down to Mammoth. And
jeez,
I snowboarded more than I did school.
Yeah. Like, did some team rider or even a rep think, oh, you know what, this person's going to school, so hindsight being 2020, they blew it, but like, yeah, let you go to school, try it out. And obviously you're not going to be compatible with school because you're just thinking about snowboarding all the time. Holy moly.
I was definitely in the like freshman, partying, meeting new people, first year away from home, like, I'm snowboarding all the time, like still doing like school, like still getting like decent grades. Yeah. And it was just funny because it was, we called it like Camp SNC because it was more like camp than anything, like hanging in the dorms with everybody and being mischievous and stuff like that. But in having that perspective, I'm like, I totally understand. Like that was like a hot period of snowboarding. It's like I don't know. I feel like I had earned stuff, but you feel like you earned stuff and maybe you weren't there yet. So, and if anything, it was just a little more fire under my ass to get me to be better and still work hard and get better and just love snowboarding for snowboarding. I got to go shred around Mammoth with the guys. Like I had met Kevin Casillo and Danny Cass and Lane and Kyle and a lot of the Grenade guys out at the Waterville Valley Nationals.
Right.
And then it was fun. Yeah, Kevin was going to the same college as me. So we were like, hey, I remember you. And then it's like, he knew all the guys down in Mammoth. So it's like, I'd connect with them down in Mammoth and go shred around Mammoth. And that's how it related to Grenade and kind of even getting into the super park at Mammoth. Like they were like, yo, you should let this girl ride. It's like I'm riding like on an old Solomon, or maybe I had some weird M3 that was like de-slamming or something. I had some funky gear at that time.
Just riding whatever you can get your hands on.
Yeah, fully. So it was like, things work out how they should. And yeah, I kind of got noticed by Christine McConnell, who was the team manager at Rosignol at the time, as well as like Dave Sipniewski, who was I think it was the Burton TM at the time. And
Wow.
I think I just kind of got the attention of some people and, chatted with them over the summer. And, I got to go up to Hood for the first time with the Burton guys, and that was epic.
Dope.
And, got my first checkout on a Burton board.
Nice.
With Blotto, shot my first sequence and checked out.
Royalty.
Just awesome experience. Yeah. And then it just so happened that, when it came down to it, it just felt better to go with the Rossi deal.
Okay. Yeah.
And I'm super stoked that I went that way, because I got to, hang with Travis, and we traveled a bunch, and he's the one that introduced me to, going out snowmobiling in the backcountry, and that kind of sparked that whole aspect of snowboarding for me. I was like, oh, this is cool. This is super fun. I had never even thought about snowmobiles or, riding that kind of POW or hitting that stuff. I'd only seen it in the movies. I didn't really know what it was.
Right.
So
where's the first place you go out?
I feel like I went out in Jackson snowmobiling the first time, really. And I feel like it was with Travis. I could be wrong, but
that makes sense.
I kind of got, I got tagged along. I would just be tagging along on Travis's sled, and, he would rip us up to the top, and I'd get to ride the snowmobile back down. And then, he would rip us up, and we just alternated.
It's pretty scary at first, hey? Learning right now, I'm learning to sled, and I feel like my snowboarding's there, but getting back down, when it's not my turn to ride it, is the most stressful thing. I don't know how people enjoy riding sleds.
It's so fun. It's you just gotta figure out a couple little things. But yeah, downhill is definitely scarier than most things sometimes, because you just are not, you're not in control with the throttle. You're just gravity taking you down. Your brake only works so good going downhill.
Totally.
So you have to learn to finesse it and kind of learn to use your weight to turn, and it's just a whole nother skill that you put in your bag. And and I'm because I got to get my hands on it and try that at a young, early on in my career. And I was still doing obviously tons of contests and street stuff. We'd be out hitting handrails. I'm a kid from Big Bear. I did park stuff, and it was I was so excited to go and do some street stuff, or jib the van in the back of Mammoth with the grenade guys. Or it's all so new. And I think after hanging out in Jackson for a bit one year, the Vans crew, Brian Knox and Chris Coulter and Eric Linus, and so they picked me up in Jackson, and they had a trailer with their 3 sleds on it, and they were we're going on a sled trip up to Montana. And I was like, all right, sick. I'm gonna get to go out sledding. And I think we went sledding one time on the way up. And we got stuck in Butte, Montana, because the roads just iced over, and it was so sketchy driving with the trailer. And so we ended up getting stuck in Butte and doing a handrail trip in Butte, Montana, with all of our snowmobiles and stuff. And we were just oh shit, there's a lot of actual cool stuff to do in Butte. And then on the way back to Salt Lake from that trip, we stopped in Idaho Falls for something, and I was I'm gonna buy a snowmobile. I had just won some cash from a contest, and I was you know what, screw it, I'm gonna buy a snowmobile. You got a spot on this trailer, let's do it. I'm diving in. And Knox was just all right, yeah, okay, cool,
that is so sick.
So I bought us an 03 Skidoo Summit, the old body styles, blue old clunky sled.
Totally.
On the way back, we stopped at some mountain pass, and under a full moon, and we had a 18 pack of beer, and we just were woo, ripping around in the dark, learning how to learn how to tilt it, and try to do some powder turns and stuff. And it was just so fun, and I was hooked after that. I was anytime I could go snowmobiling, I'm stoked. So I drag that thing around with me in my Ford Ranger between contests and rail jams and get out when I could. It was awesome.
That just sounds like a dream life. So you're winning contests at this time. You could hit a legit street rail, and you've got your sled in your back of your truck in case it dumps. Like, you're 100% dialed in.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say 100% dialed in, but I was learning.
Yeah.
At that point, I was just like, anything I could do, I was so down. You know, you're like, I'm traveling all the time. Like, when I'm home, I get to shred like Mammoth Park with all the dudes, and then I go out on some random like contest trip, and I come back, and then I take off on a road trip with the sled, and it's just, you know, it's like I had a hunger for anything I could do. I was like so energized and just stoked and having a good time and winning prize money and buying houses. I was like just stoked. I was living it.
That's incredible. How do you get the financial savvy to start buying houses? Do your parents have like some money savvy in spite of not being, you know, people that put money first? You know what I mean? I
mean, definitely my mom and dad were like, you need to buy a house. Like, you have all this chunk of change. Like, they're like, the smartest thing you can do is buy a house.
Right.
And I was like, yeah, okay. Like, being like, sure, like, buy a house in Mammoth. And, you know, my parents have never had a lot of money, so I think they're very like wary of what they do with their money. And you know, if you have a kid that just wins, you know, 50 grand at a contest, you're like, I mean, you should buy a house. Like, what else do you do with that amount of money?
Yeah.
Like, yeah. So.
Yeah, that'd be scary. If my daughter won 50 grand at a contest, I would be like concerned right now. She's 21. How old were you around that age?
I think I was 19 or 20 when I bought my house in Mammoth.
Yeah, that's incredible. You know? That's dope.
And it's like, it's kind of psycho. Like, and it's been awesome. Like, my parents are obviously my like number one supporters and biggest fans, and they've always had that in mind. Cause you know, when you're that age, you're not thinking about, you know, investing in a IRA or thing like that, or buying a home, like stuff like that. So it's like, it's awesome that my mom was like, okay, like, this is what we need to do. Like, we need to get you set up with like a Roth IRA or a 401k or whatever the heck. Like, my mom has definitely been the one pushing me to like become like form an S corp. So it's like she's way more ahead of it than I am. I'm just like out having fun, and she's like, we need to think about your future.
That's so sweet. That's so awesome. Yeah. So you stayed close with them through the whole career. Oh
yeah. Like, I would go out to X Games, and they would come out for every year. I'd be at X Games, and we'd have like, you know, they're so supportive. Like, I couldn't ask for better parents, you know.
Oh,
like,
that's so dope.
Yeah, and they still love snowboarding, and my mom and dad will get out there. You know, they're getting a little older, so they're not getting out there as much as they used to, but they're so down. Like, they're just so into the scene and just active, and they still go mountain biking in Big Bear. My dad's 73. He's out like mountain biking. My mom's, you know, in her 60s. She's out mountain biking, doing all the stuff. She's like, they're hipper than I am. Like, they're way more hip than I am. Like, they're always trying new stuff and like telling me about this. And I'm just like, man, you guys are way more into it than
I dope.
Yeah.
Tell me a bit about Danny Cass and hanging out with Danny, one of the raddest snowboarders in the world, and he could win, you know, an Olympics. He was a real anomaly. What was it like to be a part? Were you a part of his crew? Like, did you shred with him?
Yeah, I mean, shredding around Mammoth with like Danny and all the grenade guys, like, we were just mobbing around together. Like, it was such a like eclectic crew of people, and it, you know, it was bigger than just the grenade people that, like, the names that people are familiar with. Like, there was so many people that were just part of that family in Mammoth. And, you know, Danny was like the mascot, like the ringleader. It's like Matt and Danny were just doing this awesome thing that felt so natural for everybody, I think. And I think, they're just doing what they do, being themselves, like kind of shooting from the hip and not listening to, the rules. They're like, oh, we're going to do this. We're going to, why wouldn't we do this? Yeah, sure. Like testing boundaries.
Totally.
And, yeah, it was, it was just a really cool vibe to be a part of. And like going over and hanging out with Danny and Kevin and Dennis and Dingo and Lane and everybody, and just making family dinners and like going and shredding like the little mini ramp at like the Mono Street house and partying. Like we'd all roll into a house party pretty deep and kind of take over. Like it was just a really fun crew to be a part of, celebrating birthdays all together. It was a little family.
Oh, that sounds so rad.
Yeah, and like, Danny's just out having a good time. Like he's just shredding, doing what he wants to do, and he's, he had fun with it. They had fun with Grenade, and I think it was a really special time. And you got to admire that. Like Danny was just so fun to be around. I think that's what kind of inspired people, It wasn't, yeah.
It translated, right? It translated into snowboarding. It was like, you could see that he was having fun. Was he the kind of guy who would go train in a perfect pipe for hours and hours and hours? And you're like, Danny, come on, it's time to go. The mountain's closed. Or was he was just naturally talented at snowboarding?
I feel like he was definitely more naturally talented. Like he would go ride the pipe, but it's not like he was, training like everybody. Like he'd be riding main park and hitting the jumps and hitting rails. Like he would just ride everything. Like he's just such a naturally talented snowboarder in general. But you'd see him, you'd be in the pipe and like be shredding the pipe, but it wasn't ever like, militant like I think some pipe riders are.
Yeah, there were coaches at that point, right? Like there were people that he was competing against that were training on trampolines and coaches and airbags and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we had airbags yet, but like I remember, I think it was Bud Keene that was a big kind of coach figure in Danny's life, and like kind of those like a bunch of the guys, like they looked to Bud as like kind of their coach and guidance. But yeah, I think it just naturally happened. Like the progression just kind of was happening. Like people were pushing themselves to do different things. Like at one point it was like, how many spins can you do off and on a box? It's
right.
The guys are doing like 450s onto stuff. It's like, it was just a perfect scenario for everybody to just like be pushing themselves and like fueling each other.
Yeah. And you, at that time too, you're winning X Games, right? Like, so you're right at the edge of the progression of women's snowboarding, kind of around the same time. Am I getting the timelines right here? Yeah,
like I think my first X Games was in 2002, and I did like 10 years of X Games, and I got really close to getting a gold, but I got a couple silvers. But yeah, I was kind of up there as far as like 540s and some 720s and stuff like that. And
yeah,
it was kind of at a point where it was hard for us to get past that. And then I think like right as I was leaving competition is when a lot more girls were getting more 7s and some 9s and stuff like that. And that's where I think the contest scene kind of started taking off a bit for the women.
Yeah, when you watch women snowboarding now, are you just blown away?
Oh yeah,
that stuff is nuts, right?
Yeah, like that's why like natural selection, it's like I see like Zoe and Anna, and oh my gosh, I'm just like, you guys are amazing. Like you're doing stuff that I like dreamt about. Like there was like not even within my reach that I would like dream about it. I'm like, someday maybe I could do a 9 or a 10.
Right.
Like I was still figuring out 7s. Like,
right.
That's kind of where that was my stopping point. I was like, 7s are kind of where I could get to, and then tried for a 9 here or there, but didn't quite happen.
Who were the
So it's
girls
like,
that you were competing against when you're...
in X Games, I mean,
Yeah.
it was, oh man, who was all doing that? I mean, Jana for sure.
Yeah.
Natasha,
Rad.
Chanel Sladix, I mean, Leanne and Annie when they were competing, and like, you know, slopestyle and big air and rails, and yeah. And I mean, Tara for sure. Like, Tara was still competing.
She was still competing. Yeah.
Yeah, the first few years. And that's kind of when, you know, the girls kind of did all the events.
Yes.
You know, like Kelly Clark was doing slopestyles and big airs, and Tora Bright, I think, got second at the second or third at the world champs that I won. So it's like we were kind of all doing a little bit more of everything. And now I think we're a little more, you know, specialized in what we do.
Totally.
You've
watched it go, right. Well, it kind of goes full circle to the beginning, what I was talking about. When you don't know that it's possible, right? Like when someone shows up at your contest that you won last year with a 7 and now they're doing a 9, you're like, but they saw you do it. You know what I mean? Like you saw girls doing 5s and you brought 7s or whatever. The progression of snowboarding has definitely been on a steady timeline.
For sure. I mean, when I was amateur, like back at Snow Summit, just shredding around with like my buddies, they were like, you need to learn a 540. They're like, if you learn a back 5, you will be able to win things and you will be a professional snowboarder. So I was like, oh, okay, cool. So I like learned a back 5, and that's literally what like catapulted me into professional snowboarding. And that's what I won contests on for years.
Rad.
Was back 5s. And so it's like, obviously if you see somebody winning contests doing a back 5, you're like, I need to do a back 5, or I need to like up it to a 7, or you know, you just, it's a very methodical progression, and you're like, oh crap, okay, they're doing a front 5 or a switch back 5, and you're like, I need, like, you just are like, if I want to be there, I need to learn that. So it just it's you know, it just happens, it's natural. That was another thing I think I said to Rasman about women in snowboarding. I was like, the top women competitors now are like 50 times better than when I started snowboarding. The guys, like, it's going to just keep progressing. It's going to keep progressing, and it's going to get closer and closer. And as it's a matter of incentives in a lot of ways, right? Like if you could win 50 grand doing a back 5, holy shit. You're going to get a lot of girls into it. That's for sure. Somebody else is going to be like, shit, I could learn a back 5. I could win that money. So it's like, you know, it's taken a little bit of time, but it's also like now I think we're just like exponentially every year getting so much, like the girls are getting so good.
Yes.
It's just like, I feel like the reins have been taken off, and they're just like, oh, we could do that.
Totally.
Like, well, and it's so cool to see.
It's fun to watch. Big time.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, okay, women are just stepping into the same size jumps as the guys.
Yeah. I look back at some of the photos like early in my career, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like those jumps are not good. Like those are bad looking jumps, but they were awesome, you know, and it's what you know. And it was good to see them get better, you know, like they got bigger, but then they got safer. So it's like, I love big jumps. Like I loved hitting like super park jumps. Like that was so fun to me, and just
rad,
you know, like more air was awesome.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, you kind of need the smaller jumps for other people to get to that point, like to progress up to the big jumps. But eventually it was just like, you gotta hit the big jumps, just like you gotta do a back 5. Like you gotta hit the big jumps to compete with the other girls that are hitting the big jumps. Like,
yeah.
And it's really cool to just see the girls riding all the same features. Like, yeah, it speaks to their confidence and to their ability, and just, you know.
Yeah, I like that a lot. It's super dope. It's super dope. Let's talk a little bit about Vans, because you get on Vans pretty much right away in your pro career, right? You've been on Vans for 20 years. Is that right? Yeah.
It's kind of crazy to say, right? Like,
yeah.
It's trippy, because I feel like I feel like I'm still 20s, like
Yes.
in my 20s a lot of the time. And I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Like, but yeah, Vans has been the best. Like they've been the best company to ride for. And I've seen a lot over the 20 years I've ridden for them. And I just have so much like pride to be on that team. Like to see the people that were on the team when I got to join and who the new people are on the team. I feel like they've just had a really great like vibe and just really awesome people that have been a part of that team, like in-house and as riders. Like I got a lot of opportunity through Vans and got to work through ups and downs with them, and that they've really stuck by me and like backed what I've wanted to do over the years has just been really special.
Such a great company.
Yeah, it's like you kind of have this unspoken understanding of people when they're wearing Vans. You're like, yeah, what's up? Like,
Totally.
I always like compliment people. I'm like, oh my God, I love your shoes, or how do you like your boots? Like, I just feel like it gives me this like, connection to them regardless of, what we're doing, who they are. I'm just like, yeah,
Totally.
like you're cool. Like, what's up.
Have you done some rad Vans team trips, like some Heli stuff with Jamie or obviously you've done tons of Vans trips.
Yeah. One of the first Vans trips, like out snowmobiling and like just being exposed to that kind of stuff and having the opportunities to do these different things has been so awesome. Like that first road trip with the guys, or we did like a heli trip, or it wasn't a heli trip, but we did a trip down to New Zealand and we got to do like a bunch of cool stuff on that trip. Like there's just a lot of things that I would never have had the opportunity to do that they have provided. And I'm just like, I look back on all those memories and I'm just like, how freaking cool is that like we, like we're all kind of delinquents in a way. We get to like travel all over the world and do this cool stuff. And like, I don't know, like how fortunate we've been to have a company that allows us to go do that stuff and like encourage us to go do that stuff and just, be different and creative and slightly troublesome.
You sound like you're a pretty good role model for the next generation. When girls come up to you at a resort and say, oh my God, can I get a picture with you or whatever? I imagine that's a pretty nice moment for you.
Yeah, it's really cool. Like it doesn't fade. Like the novelty of it doesn't fade. Like I've been doing this for 20 years and I feel like I'm kind of in my own bubble a lot. Like, I do my thing, and especially now that we're filming a bunch and we're just out doing our own thing in the mountains, it's like I'm not around a lot of people at ski resorts as much as I used to be. And even just going down to Timberline the other day, I went riding with my friend Colleen, and just at Timberline, I was like, oh my God, like girls came up to me and they were like, oh my God, you're so cool. Like, oh, and I'm just like, oh, like I blush. I'm like, oh, it just reminds me that people care, like, and that they watch and they're aware of what we're doing. And it's just like a very like raw reminder that, yeah, like people are watching and they support, and, those are the people that allow me to have a job.
Right.
So
right.
It's just really, really cool. And I'm so appreciative of everyone that does that. I'm always like, yeah, like come say hi. Like,
yeah.
just another snowboarder girl.
That's so sick. Yeah. Getting invited to the natural selection has put you right back in. I think that's got to be the most watched snowboarding event of all ever. It has to be. So you're in front of the most, like there's the Olympics, which to me is like, okay, a lot of people watching the Olympics, but you might watch some curling highlights and then the women's half pipe and then you know what I mean? Like it's not the biggest snowboarding event ever, which natural selection, it has to be. It's just so
I would
huge.
say like natural selection is such like a highly concentrated like snowboard fan event. Like you can tune into the Olympics and you can be like, oh, like I like all the stuff and I just want to like watch it and see what's happening, where it's like you get like dedicated snowboarders like tuning in to the natural selection and such a high energy around it. And then there's people that watch the natural selection event and that messaged me that I'm like, oh my gosh, like I never would have thought you would have tuned into a snowboard event. Like it transcends snowboarding in a way.
Totally.
And it's exciting and it's just done in this amazing format that makes it fun for people to watch. And I feel like they can maybe relate to it a little bit more than like, you know, the Olympic snowboarding is at such a level that it's like psycho and people are like, I don't even know what that person just did. So I think it was just a really like kind of a perfect storm. And you can tell that that's something that people have wanted. Like there's a hunger for that. And you can see that with how many people like tuned in and are so psyched on it.
Yeah. It was for the week after it happened, you could see it at the resorts. Everybody's trying to, you know, be like natural selection-y about there. Yeah. Because when it would snow, people would be looking at, you know what I mean? Like it is a really inspiring event in that if you had to choose what snowboarding was, you know what I mean? Like if aliens came down and said to explain us snowboarding, I don't think it would make sense to show them racing. It wouldn't make sense to even show them border cross or, you know, definitely high level contests of slopestyle would make sense, but it's lacking in that soul thing, that powder, which is the most important thing to so many people. I think you show them natural selection and they go, oh yeah, okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
And I mean, it's, you know, it's a snowboarders contest, like snowboarder contest. I don't know. Yeah. And just like, like for that week or two after the event, like I would see people being like, oh, like my friend and agent, Cersei Wallace, her little girl was like, I want to snowboard. Like, and she tries a backflip, like her third day snowboarding. And I'm all, oh my God. Like you could just see, and like other people out shredding, like kids are just like, yeah, I'm trying to hit stuff. I was like, it's just so cool to see the energy it sparked in other people. Like I feel like it's kind of breathed like a little bit of fresh air into people and got them stoked. And
you're dead on. Like it really, it breathed air into. There was a lot of snowboarders who haven't watched a contest or an Olympics or anything in a long time, and that reached out to me and were like, "Wow, that." Natural selection. You see that? I was like, I think everyone saw that. It was like the first time in like 10 years since the phones came around that I was like transfixed on something that was longer than a 15-second video or whatever, or a 30-second, 3-minute video part. It was like, oh my God, what is going to happen? Like the anticipation was like, I can't believe it. From Austin's very first run, it was like, I'm stuck to the TV for this. This is insane. Like how fun was that? Did you get to watch his first run kind of from like a rider's tent or somewhere really exciting?
Yeah, we were watching it with everybody. Like we were up in the tent and we were watching it live, like as everybody was watching it live. And it was like the energy up in the tent was so awesome, like so rad. And, you know, we're seeing it when everybody else is seeing it. And it was really cool to, like, even after the fact that the contest was over and it's like we're winding down and we're walking back to the hotel and I'm seeing like the dude cleaning the hotel room is like streaming it on his phone. And I'm like, that is so cool. Like there was just so many people tuned in. And I think I heard, you know, after they got all the info back in and everything, like on the viewership and everything, that they're like, it's one of the longest continuously streamed, or the highest continuously streamed events that Red Bull has ever put together. And that, I think, shows you how like involved people were with it. And I think that format really lent to like keeping people engaged, you know, totally. Like you want to see what the next round, who's going to win the next round, instead of like, you know, Shaun White putting down a run that scores 99 and you're like, cool, nobody else is going to fucking beat that. So you tune out.
Yeah.
So
I think you're right. The format was rad.
They did it was key, and it kept people engaged and it kept it exciting for us and for the viewers.
Yeah. Who were you up against first?
I was up against Jamie Anderson first. I was like, the night before at the seating event, I was like, okay, like I'll choose, this position, and Jamie got to choose, and she's like, I'll go against Beaman, and I was like, damn it, Jamie, because I'm like, I would have put my money on Jamie. like those girls are so good. Jamie's been riding PAL, and I'm like, even Heli, like they're all so capable, and you just don't know how it's gonna go.
Yeah, of course.
And I was just like, great, I gotta go against Jamie, like the most winning female of all time.
Oh my God.
So it was kind of a good confident booster that I made it through that round.
Yeah, that's insane. That's
Jesus.
How was this? Okay, how was the sleep between? Right, because it started to dump. Right, is that what happened?
Yeah,
it reset.
We had like a perfect reset between the first day to the second day, and I don't know. We just scored so perfect on conditions. Like you could nitpick a few things, but I mean, we just were so lucky and so dialed, and I slept pretty good. It was more about just kind of figuring out what I wanted to do. Like I didn't really consider everybody else's runs and what they were doing. It was more just like trying to stay focused on like, what do I want to do and how do I want to approach this? So I don't know. I don't feel like I'm in a really great competitive mind frame right now. Like I could have gotten a little more competitive, but I don't know. I try not to get too psyched out on that and just focus on what I want to do and how I can ride to the best of my abilities, and just kind of shakes out how it does. And with an event like that, it's like you can plan and you can strategize, but it's like things change every round.
Yeah.
And the snow changes, and the takeoffs and the landings change, and you're just like, oh gosh, okay, like that was my line and now it's bombed out, or crap, what am I going to do now? Or you lose enough speed between things that you're like, oh, I can't hit that, but maybe I can hit this thing. Like it's just so spur of the moment.
Yeah.
And that's something that's very, very tricky with that event as opposed to like a regular slopestyle, like
yeah,
their slopestyle is very formulated, and you're like, okay, you hit this rail and you hit 3 jumps.
Yeah.
And
the course
really
is going to be
option.
perfect, right? Like if somebody bomb holes a landing, it's like they're going to clean it up for you before you run.
Yeah, and it's like the speed has a little bit of variability to it, but there's just so many more variables for the natural selection course. And it's like Travis said, he's like, you adapt and you overcome, like that's part of the challenge.
Yeah.
And you got to be able to make those split-second decisions where you're going. Like the second jump I hit, I hadn't even looked at that really. Like I was like, not even an option. And then I was just like, well, I'm going at it and I got to hit something else, so I might as well go for it. So it's just like, you never know. You kind of just Hail Mary it a lot of the time.
Yeah, of course. How was Alaska?
Alaska was super fun. And I just felt so like fortunate that I got to go, because I wasn't slotted to go up there, and I had made other plans and was kind of like moving on with the season. And then when I got word that Marion wasn't able to make it back over, and that I would be the one that got to go, I was just like, you gotta be kidding me. Like this is awesome. Like I'm totally not prepared, but I'm like so excited to go.
Yeah.
So
well, the pressure's off at that point too, right? Because otherwise, if you would have known the whole time, you would have just been either thinking about it, psyching yourself up, or psyching yourself out, or whatever. So like you getting to go in a kind of wild card position is like, all right, I'm in. This is fun. That's I'm imagining.
Yeah, I mean, at least I had the advantage that nobody really thought I would be going. So just that I got to go was great.
Yeah.
But you still get a little like psyched out. Like Alaska always does a little bit of a mind fuck on you. You're like, oh, like you can't really prepare for Alaska until you're up in Alaska. And it's like, I literally had 2 days warning before I knew I was going, and I was like, oh my god, I should probably go snowboard tomorrow. Like go up to Baker and like try and ride like a little line. I was like, I gotta at least do some turns before I fly up to Alaska, and we're just in it doing this contest. So
Yep.
You know, a little bit of a scramble, but at least I've been to Alaska before and I've experienced it in a few different settings, whereas it's like, man, like Zoe never been to Alaska, and
Right.
it's like, dude, like I can't even imagine being in her shoes, going up there and being like, I've never snowboarded here before, and I gotta compete on like gnarly terrain, and like I'm just like, I feel unprepared, and I've been going to Alaska for 15 years. It's
Right.
like, I'm still like, oh my god, like what is going to happen up there? Like what's it going to be like? Like I have a little bit more experience, so I can kind of wrap my head around it more, but I also know the dangers and that a little more. So
Yeah.
but I was so excited, and we had so much fun. Like what an epic crew to be there with, and just being up at the Trujillo Mountain Lodge was such a cool thing on its own, and just getting to fly around and be part of a production of that scale up there and see it go down and just be there and experiencing it was just amazing.
That's
like,
so sick.
yeah.
Are you
I've been telling everybody that I won just because I got to go. Like we all won
Yeah.
just because we got to go do it,
Oh, that's so amazing. So are you still a pretty big fan of snowboarding? Like, would you have watched Travis's, what was the one where he was up at Trujillo with Rasman? Truffle
the
Pigs
Truffle
or
Pig?
something? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I don't watch a ton of snowboard movies, but
Right.
I mean, I pretty much watch everything that Travis does. And like
Yeah.
there's certain people that I'm like, oh, if they're doing a project, I want to watch it.
Who are
So-
your people?
I mean, I always like the girls' projects. I'm a huge fan of watching, like, all the stuff that the girls have done, whether that's, Jetpack or Too Hard or our runway stuff or whatever's kind of coming out. Like, I always want to see what's going on with the girls,
Mm-hmm.
just so I know what's going on.
Yeah.
And I'm tuned in. And then, like, I love any project that, like, Travis does or Robin or, I mean, kind of like the stuff that comes out of Europe, like the Side Hit Euphorias that Arthur did were so cool.
Oh, so good. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. It just has to have that certain appeal to it. There's certain people that I'm like, ooh, I like what they do, so I want to tune into that.
Yeah.
Like Jake Blauvelt, like just stuff like that. It's really cool, and it inspires me to keep going out there and riding and having fun and pushing myself in those ways. So
This has been an absolutely amazing conversation. Hana, thanks for talking with me.
yeah, it was great talking to you. I'm like, it's been such a crazy season. Like,
Yeah.
I can't believe it's over already. And I'm just like, oh crap, that happened so fast. And it wasn't what I thought it was going to be, but it was still so good.
Yeah, it was a really good season. Hey, like
Yeah.
COVID just threw this wrench into everything that,
Yeah.
are we going to travel? Are we going to, but it also probably took the pressure off a few of you guys with, oh my God, I can kind of stick around one place. Like you said, you basically did a season in Jackson, which is like, if you could pick anywhere, if it's not going to be Baker, it's going to be Jackson, or it's going to be, the Whistler backcountry or
Whistler.
something. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's like, those
Yeah.
are the three places.
totally. And I think it was a really good practice of just being open to what gets thrown at you and what the universe delivers, and going with the flow and trying to, make the best of it. And it's not what we planned, but it's what we got. And it was still really great. So
Yeah, I love that. Huge fan of your snowboarding. Huge fan.
thank you so
And
much.
it's pretty safe to say you're like the snowboarder's snowboarder for women snowboarding. That's so dope.
Huge compliment.
Having someone to look up to that has good style, that rides aggressively, that rides with the boys no problem. You know what I mean? With the cool guys. That's
Yeah.
pretty dope.
Yeah, I love our little snowboard family, and I'm just so happy to be a part of it, because it is something so special. So
Dope.
hopefully I can get up to Canada here soon and go hang out with all you guys again.
Yeah, no doubt. Are you going to get vaccinated? Is that an option for you guys yet?
I was vaccinated a little while ago because of the firefighting. I got an option to get vaccinated.
What is the firefighting? You mentioned that before. Like you trained to be a firefighter in out of Bellingham? Is that your summer job?
So,
You fight
yeah,
forest fires or something?
Yeah, I kind of, when everything was going down this spring,
Yeah.
I was like, oh my God, having a moment where I'm like, I don't know if there's going to be a snowboard career to come back to in the fall. I don't know if real estate is going to be good. Like,
Wow.
and
Yeah.
I just was like, you know what? Like, maybe I should look into this firefighting thing. It just kind of like caught my eye, and I was like, oh, I'll look into it. And the more I started thinking about it, I was like, there's some job security in firefighting.
Mm-hmm.
So I like refer to it as my COVID hobby, like my COVID job, because I'm like, it's hopefully COVID proof.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Definitely.
yeah.
Holy
Yeah.
shit.
So I went through Fire Academy this fall.
Where did you
and,
go to? You have to go down to, where is it? It's Arkansas
it's
or
just through
something?
the South Whatcom Fire Authority here in
Oh,
Bellingham.
there's one in Bellingham. Cool.
Yeah, like each district kind of puts on their own academy, and you kind of learn the ropes through them, and they put you through the training. And then like right now, like I'll work a fire shift tomorrow.
Oh, wow.
And I start my EMT class on Thursday. So it's like I still got to do EMT to be a full blown firefighter.
Yep.
But yeah, I'm pulling some volunteer shifts and doing that, and yeah, it's really cool. It's another, skill that I will enjoy having, and I get to kind of help people a little more. It's a little more selfless than being a professional snowboarder. And
Kind of the opposite, eh?
yeah, and I can, adjust it to my schedule and pick up shifts where I need, and, still flexible to do real estate and be snowboarding in the winters. So yeah. It's cool.
That's a badass career, right? Like,
Yeah.
bit of real estate, firefighter. Geez, what's the firefighter community like now these days? Because it was pretty macho.
And I think there is still a bit of that like macho-ness, but you'd be surprised how many females are firefighters these days. And
Cool.
there's at least I think 8 or 9 on our department, like female firefighters. And I think, it's a really cool community. They're trying to get more women involved, and it's very similar to snowboarding in the sense that, we work in small groups and we work towards a common goal, and we're looking out for each other, and it's kind of like another little family. It's high risk situations. You see some crazy stuff. It's high stress, and yeah, I think there's definitely a bond within firefighting, like there's a bond within snowboarding. So I see a lot of parallels between my snowboard world and what I'm getting into with the firefighting world, which is cool.
Yeah, that sounds dope. Is there are you assigned to a station? Because I know a lot of times when there's not a bunch of stuff going on, there's a lot of really good food at fire stations.
Yeah, I mean, I work at I'll be on shift at one of 2 or 3 stations we have here in South Whatcom County.
Yep.
Or not Whatcom. It's not South Whatcom County, but South Whatcom Regional Fire Association.
Yep.
So yeah, it's kind of, I go and I pull a shift tomorrow I'll be at the station 28, or I might, get a shift at station 22 or 21 if they're manning that station. And yeah, I mean, as a new firefighter, I do a lot of probationary tasks and a lot of learning, like, boots on the ground learning for the first year. And they keep me pretty busy with that. I have a book that I check off tasks and stuff. But then, yeah, when we get called out on a call, it's all pretty new and exciting. And I get to, it's like it's just a lot to absorb, a lot of learning going on. So it's cool. And it's something different every time, just like snowboarding.
Yeah, it sounds super rad. Unreal. Yeah. Cool. Well, thanks again. So good to talk with you. And hopefully we get to shred at some point. I'd like to come down to Baker as soon as it opens too. I've been going there for years, but after doing this podcast this is the 6th season, my relationship with snowboarding has completely changed. Like where I'm, going down, I get to ride with, Jamie Lynn showed us a jump between the trees down on, I don't know the names of any of these runs, but
at Baker?
At Baker, the one like kind of over the step down.
Yep.
And I was like, how the hell did I not know this was here all these years? It's like the best jump on the mountain. It's so insane.
Yeah, there's something to learn from everybody you snowboard with. Like, everybody's got their little secrets or little tricks over here or there. It's like, there's always something to learn.
Oh,
and
big time.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Unreal. Awesome.
So
awesome. Thanks again.
Yeah, let me know if you come down here once the border opens.
Yeah, for sure.
Take a couple laps.
Sounds good. Awesome. Have a great day. Have a good shift tomorrow.
Thank you.
Thanks
you too.
again. All right, later. FNRad shoutouts this week to Hana and all of the women professional snowboarders that have been on this season of the show. I hope you've seen I've been making an effort to include more female voices this year. Thanks again to Shane Austin, the Wired Board guy. Thanks to all the listeners who've sent money to support the FNRad Foundation. 100% of the money we raise is going to youth programs that promote joining the board sports community. You can donate by sending a PayPal payment or an e-transfer to FNRadFoundation@hotmail.com. This week's draw winner is Tarek Elmas. Send me a DM and I'll ship you out a prize pack, including an abnormal skateboard, a t-shirt, and some stickers. Thanks, Tarek. All right. Be sure to come back next week for another episode of the FNRad Snowboard Podcast, presented by Vans and brought to you by SIA Productions.